we are here with Louie, who is running for HD 148, is that right?
That's correct.
So originally, whenever we started doing these videos, we'd really intended on just focusing on the city of Houston. And we really were not trying to expand past that, but Jessica Farrar, how long ago was it when she?
Would have been about 10 days ago now.
About 10 days ago. Mm-hmm. So this is a Houston election that is for a House position?
That's
the
correct.
State?
Mm-hmm.
Great. And so Louie reached out to us. He saw some of the other interviews that we were doing, and we were really excited that he's already engaging and wanting to talk to people in the animal rescue community and really see, you know, what issues we've got and be willing to help if you're elected to the state position.
And he even asked if he can bring his dog.
Yeah, we appreciated that. We were like,
yeah.
so relatable.
She would have been perfect. She just sits right there.
Oh, gosh.
She's super cute. Next time, we'll do
Yeah,
that.
follow up.
We're going to do that. That sounds
So, yeah, animal welfare is one of your platforms that you're running on, right?
That's correct.
Why is that? How'd you start off with it?
You know, it was never really something that I had to think long about. Me and my wife both love animals. I grew up around stray cats. I picked up a stray cat when I was probably 12 years old, and I remember that stray cat having kittens, and then that stray cat having kittens. And so I've been around animals. I had a few dogs, had a few small rodents. Always liked them, and as I got older, I found that they're great company. They're great to have around. I remember when I was going to grad school online, I would spend a lot of time on my own just hitting the books, and a lot of time hitting the books, but my dog was always there with me. So that sense of companionship is remarkable, and I think it's stood the test of time. Dogs, cats, they've always served a purpose to us, and they've been noble companions, so why abandon them now? They don't have a voice. And some of the things that I believe in, that government shouldn't be the purveyor of injustice or victimless crimes, and animals like these are perfect victims because they don't have a voice.
What are some of the things you plan on, taking on once you are elected?
So if I were elected, there's already a fund set up for general animal welfare. I think you guys know about it, and I've been reading about it as well. I would look to do more private-public partnerships. So one of the things that we like to do personally is we donate to no-kill shelters, me and my wife. So we would like to step that up. If there's a matching program that the state can do to empower these organizations to further the mission and prevent the mass spread of homeless animals, then we're for that. Obviously, we're fiscally conservative. We don't want to just throw money at a problem if it's not working. But if something is working, then I think we have a responsibility to step up. And I think a lot of the problem is culture. Our culture has to change. Our mentality has to change. The way we think about animals has to evolve. There's a very strict line of thinking that animals are personal property and therefore they're just property. Mm-hmm. But there's no consideration for them being sentient in any way. And you see that in higher developed animals that have, can display feelings, that they recognize themselves. So I think that standing up for animal welfare starts now. If not here, then when?
Right.
That's a really good point. It's so funny you mentioned talking about partnering with nonprofit groups, because there was a bill that somebody tried to pass this last session, making it to where only people that made below a certain amount of money could access nonprofit groups that did like low-cost spay and neuter, low-cost rabies vaccines and everything. So it's funny you mentioned furthering that partnership rather than trying to exclude people.
That's so odd. I guess the sensation that we're trying to protect certain people against abuse, but normally it works the other way. I think you have to expand the spectrum and let the people that can actually deliver the results rise to the top, and then we have to focus on them.
Yeah, it was funny. That's exactly accurate. And if you get a spay or a neuter done at a private clinic, it can cost you $400, $1,000.
Probably $1,200 to Tony Busby.
Yeah, we had somebody that had their dog fixed. We don't know where it was, but and it was a bark foster they were fostering, and they were paying out of pocket. And these people, the vet clinic knew that they had money, but they paid $1,200 for the neuter of the dog, which to me is crazy. But it's so funny because the low cost clinics, it's $100. It's so.
There's vouchers and everything.
Yeah. But that bill was very adamantly opposed, and so many people. It was 3 hours of people speaking against it. There was not a single person that was there in support of it. So, anyways, I thought that was interesting, but
that's concerning.
It was. What happened was there's one individual that was on this. I think it was the Texas Livestock Commission something. anyways, he had vets in his very small rural district that their offices were closing because too many people were going to them for services. But to me, it's like, if people can use the lower, anyways,
Why
slightly
not?
off topic.
Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I take my animals, shout out to Tidwell Animal Clinic, that's
Yeah.
where I go. Low cost.
Exactly.
And all my animals go there. It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a great doctor too.
It's so funny that you can get the low cost.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as it's nothing major, but for vaccines and all that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good
So,
point.
in mentioning rural, one of the things we talked on with Laura, on THLN,
Yeah.
was how to bridge the gap with urban cities and rural areas, when it comes to just animal cruelty and everything else. Like, rural areas don't really have many resources.
Well, it's rural areas don't have many resources, and then there's also a mindset of an animal that's like a farm animal, and those that are in a well-developed area. It's such a different mindset, and this is not animals that we always talk about this. It's not a partisan issue. It's not a Republican issue and Democrat issue. It's so across the board, but there is a big gap between just very like cities versus rural areas. And your district is, very, it's not a rural area at all. What do you think we can do as far as bridging that gap between just the rural areas and the city? Because you've got an area that I feel people will be on board.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. And what's interesting too is that, part of this district, Northline, I think people keep chickens in their backyard.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And one of the issues that I remember going to a convention about, and some of the people that are advocating against animal rights, were that, wait, so you're going to give chicken rights? I mean, so the chicken's a sentient being? And I thought it was an absurd point, but I thought, like, well, maybe that's the conversation we ought to have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they didn't like that. But I think you're right. Inner cities, people tend to be more in commune with their animals. They're not working animals.
Yeah.
They're not animals we take to the slaughter, to feed people. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. I'm not going to lie. I personally don't like seeing the way that some horses are treated.
We got to touch
Yeah,
on.
we gotta-
You just brought up a great point. Keep
Yeah.
going though.
Okay. I was saying that I follow several groups and it's disturbing to see what happens with horses that run at the track and they're so easily disposed. And I don't. It really kind of bothers me. But I know that it's an industry you can't do anything about. So, I mean, I think greyhounds suffer the same fate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that it's not just dogs and cats. That's what most people think here in urban cities.
And
But-
we also, though, as
Yeah.
animal people, I am guilty of saying, I talk about dogs, and we're not really trying to be specific to dogs
Right.
and cats, and I'll leave out cats altogether, unintentionally. But I'm telling you, I fostered
You
cats.
have a bias.
They'll tell you. I blame it on my dogs that don't like cats.
Yeah.
That's the story I'm sticking to. So you brought up horses. There is a group right now that is talking about, this is slightly off topic because you're running for a state position and this is a city issue, but I'd like to see if you think there's anything that we could do statewide
Yeah,
on this.
exactly.
There's horses that are being used in downtown Houston and in Kemah Boardwalk
Oh, yeah.
that you might have seen this. They're breaking current ordinances. They've got sores on their legs. They're being given water from a fountain. And it's such basic common sense, just animal care. Do you think there's anything that the state could do in that area as far as enforcing or making more laws that are better? What do you think is the difference between what should be done citywide and statewide as far as an issue like that?
Well, this goes back to what's the role of government.
That's-
Now, depending on how you view animals, if you view them as personal property, and you view them as livestock, then you can do with them with what you want. If you view them as beings that deserve some amount of respect, some amount of care, then as a civil libertarian, I would say there's a duty to protect them against abuse. So, and that's where I lean. And some of the people that I know kind of turn their nose up at me. I'm like, what are you talking about? But I think that's something we ought to consider. So basic human rights, we have those. What about basic animal welfare rights?
Yeah, right.
They deserve. I can't fathom the abuse, and I've seen this before because I've seen them in downtown Houston,
Yeah.
and you can see it. And it's really hot outside, and they're wearing a lot of gear,
Yeah.
No breaks.
and they're there all day,
Yeah.
and the pavement is hot. So, what's the horse going to do to say that I'm fatigued, collapse?
And then animal control has been out there before, but I think it's just because it's kind of hard to prove that they've been there all day.
Right.
Regardless
It
of
is.
video, and then we have the whole judges who don't really care, who don't have that compassion.
Yeah,
So.
it's going to be a cultural change. That's what's necessary. To answer your point, we have to take a cultural change. Just like anything in our society, a lot of things that people are passionate about and want to change, you can't fix with the law. The law doesn't make people do the right thing. They have to want to do the right thing. So it starts with really educating people about, what it means to mistreat an animal. And to me, it kind of says something about your character if you can mistreat animals like that, because animals are defenseless. They don't have a voice. I mean, it's easy to hit something that's not going to hit you back.
Yeah.
But, if you did that to a person, that would be an assault. So we need to evolve a little bit on that.
Yeah.
So you say laws don't make a person do the right thing.
Correct. You can't legislate morality.
So this past session, SB295 failed to pass. That was mostly because of one representative that killed it on a technicality, Stickland. He's not running again. But what do you think that a basic shelter bill, so really all it covered was having a tether over a certain length,
Right.
Tell me all the...
Clean water. What was the word they used?
They wanted, the word in the original, what they wrote was potable. And this,
Which is defined as clean.
they wanted it to say clean water because they said people didn't know what potable water meant, which to me is silly.
Yeah.
And then what's the other one? Basic shelter during extreme temperatures, is that right?
Yeah, and in removing the 24-hour waiting period that an officer has to wait in order to seize an animal.
So if they go out and, an officer goes out, they see that these things are going wrong, it was to make it to where they don't have to go revisit that site. They can actually issue a citation whenever they see, which to me makes sense. Like if you're going down the road and you're speeding, the officer doesn't see if you're going to speed tomorrow going on the way to work. It's, you get the citation then. Would that be something that you'd be in support of? Even though laws can't make people, yeah. Would that be something you'd be in support of?
I would support something like that, and I'll have to say Jonathan Stickland's done a lot of good things. He's actually one of the people that we really respect, but I disagree with him. And I think that you start to have to pave a way for people to understand that this kind of behavior is being discouraged. And laws that have no teeth on the books are worthless. And I've heard this before too. It's like, you have to wait 24 hours. Or in 24 hours, the owner's going to do something to cure the problem.
Yeah.
And, it basically shifts
Makes it
the responsibility.
irrelevant.
Yeah, it's moot by then. So no, I mean, do something that can affect a change, or why do it at all? So yeah, I'd be in favor of doing something a little bit more that has teeth in it.
Okay. So would that be, let's say, have you read the law? I haven't read it recently, but, so you're saying make it change from what it was
I would
originally
say that,
proposed?
yeah, I mean, if it's 24 hours, let's go with 24 hours.
They
That
wanted
needs
to take
change.
away the 24-hour completely. Do you think that that's...
No, that's not right. Because if you see somebody in the city abusing their animal or chaining them up, and I know this a lot because it's not just me, but there's a whole group of people in the city that I follow, that I talk to, that watch how animals are abused. And you can't go report somebody because this is exactly what happens. So
remove that 24-hour...
remove it.
Yeah.
I mean, have an officer come out, write a citation then and there. If it's a repeat offender, you have to allow them to seize the animal for the animal's well-being.
Yeah.
So otherwise it's neglect, and laws that don't affect the change that you want are useless laws. So I don't understand that.
And on a repeat offender, that comes down to a registry. That'd be great to even have at a state level.
So we talked to different people locally, and there's so many local adoption events that are doing the clear the shelter events, where everything, you can go get an animal for free, basically. And there's some shelters that are not Harris County, not Houston, but other smaller local shelters that are basically giving away unaltered animals for free, which presents a big problem for us for a couple of reasons in the animal rescue community. But we've talked to different people that are running for this city position, and they've said, we love the idea of a animal cruelty registry, but it's not so effective if we're talking about it on a city level. That would be something that would probably be more effective statewide, just because someone would go from, okay, Houston, I'm on this registry for Houston, I'm just going to go to Pasadena Animal Shelter. How do you think that could be done? Would that be something you'd be in support of?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I'm not equating children to animals, but let's substitute animals for children. If somebody could abuse a child in one city and just had to move a few blocks over to another city, and then he could abuse another child, then that law doesn't work.
Yeah.
So if we're in agreement that we should be abusing animals, then we should make it so that you can't skip around the law that way. So I think, we spend a lot of money on databases. but, you know, if it prevents the cruelty of animals, which to me indicates that there is potential for cruelty to human beings,
Exactly, yeah.
then I think we should probably consider having that. And I'd be in support of it.
Great.
We could have to talk to some people about it because the rural people feel like, you know, we're crossing a line, but I think we have to start talking about it.
So there was a recent day where a bunch of different Harris County officers went out and they made 13 arrests that were animal cruelty arrests in Harris County. And we went back after this happened. They published the names of the people that were arrested. We went back and looked at the criminal record of these different people. And I thought that there would be some things, but I was in shock. There was assault with a deadly weapon. There was child endangerment. There was spousal abuse. There was, you know, a history of hard drugs. We're not talking about like small, like, oh, you know, just very flimsy things. We're just a history of violent crimes. And I find it so funny whenever people, you know, in elected positions act like animal cruelty is not an issue, because it's not, even if you do not care about animals one bit. It's a human issue. It's a, you know, I think you made a great point of, you know, if someone is willing to abuse an animal, they will likely transfer that over to something else if.
Sure,
You know.
I think that's what child psychologists look for too. Like, are the kind of children that abuse animals? I mean, that starts early, and I mean, for somebody to still be doing that as an adult, I mean, yeah, you have to wonder, like, what's going on here? To me, it's a marker of something, and you know, I'd be afraid if they had kids.
Yeah. I would just like them to not be able to adopt an animal.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, and that's really
You
sad
know?
too, because, you know, we when we adopted our cat, I think we thought it'd be easier, but then we had to go through a series of questions and guarantees that we're going to do this, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of hard. I'm like, why are they making it so difficult for people to adopt animals?
Now, was this through a rescue or a shelter?
It was a shelter, I think, yeah. It was out in Pasadena.
huh.
So we went out there, and I remember thinking, well, it's because they don't want to take these animals and just feed them to a dog or torture them. Like, 'cause what kind of people would come to a rescue if they knew they could just grab up a new animal?
Yeah.
So I think it's right to hold people accountable, especially people in the Latin community. In my culture, I'm Hispanic, and we're guilty of this. I mean, we don't spay, neuter our animals. You know, the animals are running around in the street, you know, abandoned. So we need to have a cultural shift.
It's a really good point.
And on that note, one of the things we always like to bring up is just, you know, there's not a lot of literature and stuff for Hispanics and in Spanish and everything, and then we're missing a big demographic who doesn't know that we even have resources in
And it's
place.
one of the biggest where we need the most focus, and
It is.
even just like the spay and neuter vouchers will sometimes not even be translated into Spanish, and we're going, this is the community that needs it so much.
Definitely.
You know?
Like even the task force, like whenever someone tries to file a report for Houston, you know, Harris County task force, it's in English. So we got to get there, right?
Yeah, I think we do, and we got it. That's part of being involved in the community. A lot of these problems that we have, not just, you know, with animal welfare, you have to be involved in the community. Like, it's not enough to be an elected official and sit in Washington and make laws that, you know, we hope we're going to affect change. You have to be a player in the community. If you really care about something, you have to advocate for it. And, you know, your sincerity, the genuineness of your efforts, it'll be noticed. Like we were talking about, you know, you could be in an island in Greece full of dogs making YouTube videos, and guess what? People are going to identify with that man, and they're going to donate to him, and he's going to adopt more dogs.
Yeah.
So we have to believe that people are the solution, not government. Government needs to really quit making misguided laws and quit making victims out of people, but we can be the problem solvers, just like we are here today. I mean, I'm not an elected official yet. I don't think either of you are, but look at all the people that are watching us and listening to this. So we're affecting change. It is. We're making a community of people that care, and this community is growing a lot larger. Of all the negative things I can think of social media, I think the one positive aspect, and there should be more positive aspects, because in the age of you know, seamless intelligence and technology, people seem to be more ignorant than ever.
Yeah.
The only bright spot I see is when I see people taking care of each other and taking care of animals. And that's inspiring. That means that we're heading down a good path, in a good direction, and I hope it continues.
I mean, it all does come down to education, right? So, and we had Greg Myers here, since he worked with HISD, and hoping we can, you know, see if we can have classes on animal welfare.
Or even just like a group
Yeah.
going out to different schools
Sure.
and, It's funny because we've had people that have tried to go out into certain areas and have gotten pushback from the districts. I don't know if there's anything. Yeah, it's very strange, and it was groups that are offering to do things for free, which to me is it didn't make sense to not want to.
Usually if something like that's going on, there's an interest that you don't see.
Yeah, that's got to be it.
And that's unfortunate because they want to impede your path of progress at the expense of animals that don't have a say in what happens to them. I would say, and something that I like to do, aside from the animal welfare causes I care about, I volunteer with a group called the Travis Manion Foundation. And we work with at-risk youth, but we also work with kids that are magnet schools, charter schools, public schools. And they're after-school programs, and we always work on these modules where we teach them character through strength and leadership. And it would be a great idea, if we went to the shelter and gave back to these communities.
Great,
Yeah, he just asked that earlier.
Yeah.
He was like, could we start it? And this is more city related than it is state related, but he was like, do you think we can get kids to go on field trips to shelters to just...
I mean, there's adults who've never been to a city shelter.
And it's rough to see, but it's so, I think it can change, it can make a very impactful, impression on kids.
Yeah, especially when you go from seeing a nice shelter like Bard to going to the Harris County who really needs resources, to other rural shelters who,
don't even have AC, their dogs are outside in runs.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Obviously, that's not something so much statewide, but
it affects change. You got to start somewhere. You got to start small, and if it works, you replicate it. So I like the idea, and we were just sitting here spitballing the idea, but really, getting kids involved at an early age, getting them to, and kids identify with animals too.
Oh, yeah.
And some kids that have been through the juvenile detention system, they can probably identify with animals that are stuck in a shelter.
That's a good point.
That's a very good point.
I think you could teach them a lot of things: responsibility, compassion, empathy. It's a good practice.
You get to learn a lot about them too.
You get to learn a lot about them, because when you see an animal, you see a reflection of yourself. It's a very communal, and what dogs have done, it's amazing. We think that we use them, but in reality, they use us.
Oh yeah.
They adapt themselves for us to be their tool. So it's mutually beneficial. I know cats aren't high on your list, but
we say that, but I've been at county commissioners 2 years ago talking about a TNR program. So it's not so much that I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person.
Your dog's not a cat.
I'm a dog person, but cats deserve more. In my opinion, cats deserve more lip service because less people care about the cats.
Yeah, they are. They're very disposable.
Like Rob has had 2 foster cats that he's had for months now, and no one will adopt those cats, but dogs and I honestly, the people that are in cat rescue, I go, oh my gosh, I respect you so much because it is so much more of a difficult.
Yeah, it is.
I will do anything. You can ask the page that I run for the county animal shelter, the cat girls. I'm like, whatever you need, just do, because I don't know anything, but I support them.
And cats are different, they have a personality. They're like your roommate, they're not your pet. So you may not get along with it. We have one cat we rescued, and he is just kind of off on his own. He identified with our dogs more.
Oh, gosh.
So he thought he was a dog for a long time. Our dogs are old, so they don't want to play with him.
Oh. So
we eventually got another cat, thinking, all right, this might solve that problem. And they get along, but the cat still thinks he's a dog. It still stays away. But then the other cat we have is all about hanging out with us, always. So they're just very distinct animals.
Yeah.
But it takes a special person to sit there and say, I'm going to work with this cat, I'm going to work with this cat, I'm going to work with this cat, because they're not like a dog. You can probably get a dog in a month or two. But a cat, it could take you years if the cat doesn't like you. Have you seen the shows of those people that have to train them? Cat behaviors.
So much respect.
A lot of respect, I agree.
I think from there, like dogs and cats have been really, I guess, just helping people see that, other animals have feelings and all that too, like pigs and all that. It's back to horses. Yeah.
Did you guys see how, I think in New York, they had a feral cat program?
Yes.
That was really cool because, in Washington, D.C., they have tons of rats. And they're out here rolling out pesticide, making the environment toxic.
Yeah.
They have natural predators, and they need something to do.
Yeah.
And I think I saw this one story, I think it was in Chicago, where this brewery had this massive rat problem. They have grains lying around everywhere, and we didn't know what to do, so they got into the feral cat program. They had 3 cats, and I think in less than 3 days.
And it solves the problem naturally. It's amazing.
I know. So they serve a purpose too. They're working animals. That's how they started out. Killing rodents.
TNR programs are so great, and interesting. Not only do they keep down the rodent population, it's if they're not reproducing, they also keep that area almost guarded from other new cat colonies coming in. And we were just talking to somebody else about this and the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And it's so funny because cats, we're not getting adopted out of shelters as quickly. That's such an effective, it's good for the cat, it's good for the environment because, there's not pesticides where, I just read a story about a cougar that died after it ate a rat or something that had the pesticides. And it was cats, DNR cats that are already, it's such a common sense solution.
We could do that with the cats I think that's what we're actually trying to do with the cats that are around our neighborhood. We're just trying to get them trapped, neutered, released.
You were trapping them yourself?
Yeah, with my hand. Not a good idea. So
We've got some traps you can buy.
Yeah. So I'll tell the story now that we're on it.
Yeah, please.
So a couple of weeks ago, we had this little litter of kittens, and my sister-in-law came from Baylor, and her roommate really wanted one. And I'm like, well, this would be
I'll
great.
rescue a cat from your street.
And I was naive, and I was dumb, and I've had cats before, but I forgot how vicious they can be.
When they've never had a human touch. Yeah.
So, we cornered him, and he seemed like he was amenable, but then I'm like, I'm going to miss my opportunity. I went to grab him, and he just turned on me. He bit me, clawed me, bit me, and I'm like, I just put him in my other hand because I didn't know what to do. It's like a hot potato. And he did the same thing. I'm like, oh no, put him down. I don't want to squeeze him too hard.
Oh.
So, I thought I scared him off, but yesterday I saw him, so he was back. So
Gosh.
I'm not mad. I get it. It's fine.
We gotta get you a trap and get them.
Yeah.
I mean, we have programs here that do that, right?
Yeah.
Bart, I'm sure you're in the city, so.
Yeah, somebody told me that you need to get a trap. I'm like, all right.
You have to get the trap from the city, and then it's kind of this is another issue that we're kind of trying to work on, is getting it to where people that, want to keep the cats on their street from reproducing, they don't have to go down to here's what's happening now.
That'd be good.
Well, they have to go down to the shelter, they have to get the trap,
Yeah.
go home, set the trap, and then once they catch the animal, they take it back in, and then they have to go pick it up. I mean, it's just, and then you have to go take the trap back. There's so many well-intentioned people that just do not have the resources to go back and forth to the shelter that many
I
times.
should just have a van full of these.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting that.
See, now we're thinking about ideas outside of the government. Right?
And we've,
Yeah.
it's true.
It's true.
But with bark, though, so we've talked about, City of Houston bark. Last year, total number of animals that came in, 70% came from citizens, and then 30% came from ACOs. To us, we just, once again, we're getting off the track of a state thing, but it's amazing what citizens, and you talk about, we've got to get more people involved and stop trying to just over-regulate and make ineffective laws.
Yeah.
It was, 70% of the animals in the entire city of Houston were brought into the shelter by citizens, not by animal control, which we don't necessarily agree with. We're not saying we support, but there's people that are willing to help bridge a gap when needed.
That's good, yeah. That means that they're stepping up. That means that it is changing.
People care
Yeah,
enough
they do
about,
care. So one of the reasons I really put this on my webpage, if you go to my website, LuisLaRottaTexas.com, is because during Harvey, we noticed that there were a lot of pets that got left behind. And we've seen this in other places, but we really didn't want to see this in Houston. One of the ladies that I work with, near and dear lady, and she told me that she was rescuing animals, and she couldn't, when she was full, her vehicle was full of animals, she put them on her carport so that they would have more time. And she said she came back, they were still there. But, I mean, can you imagine that? And people just banning their dogs or chaining your dog to something, which is what I'm completely against. The no tethering laws, I think that's probably the way to go. If you're, my dad would tether our dog, but he would have a clothesline with the tether. So it had a little bit more room.
We wouldn't even, in rescue terms, that's not even technically considered a tether. What is that?
The zip line.
Yeah, it's a zip line. And
so my dad was an innovator, I guess.
Yeah.
Really though, I'm telling you, because it's better than being wrapped around a tree where they get wrapped and wrapped and wrapped.
Very cool. Yeah, so I put that on my website. I was like, and people ask me, like, well, why'd you put that on your website, animal rights? I'm like, because, where I come from in the North Line District, from here to Parker Road, you see that a lot. People, they'll chain their dogs. I'm like, okay, they're for the defense. But, give them shelter, give them some water. If your neighbors start complaining that you're abusing your dogs, you probably shouldn't have that dog.
Yeah. And how much protection is that dog giving you if you're... It's chained. That dog can't do anything to protect your home. If they didn't, people could just get...
That's true, too. I don't understand that.
Sense.
To me, it just doesn't make sense. You just have an animal chained up.
It just looks cool and tough.
I suppose, but...
To them.
It's just a mindset, I swear. Just from going out with Alicia and Huts for Mutts, we see that all the time here in Third Ward. Everybody has their dogs chained, and what they say is that they love their animals though, and I guess that's just one of the things we have to understand. Maybe
It's so hard to,
yeah.
and I didn't really realize this until I went out with them because I focused on shelters, but you go and you talk to these people and they really truly do love their pet, and it's hard to understand whenever we have such a different standard of care for our personal animals, you know, and it blows your mind though. But then you look inside their home and they don't have that much better quality of life than the animal does. I don't know what the balance is or what the answer is, but
Like, there's oftentimes we don't even post because, you know, we'll get people
will be attacked and go, why did you not steal that dog? Or
Yeah, you can't do that either.
Because they'll just go get another dog.
Right.
You know,
exactly. The abuse continues. You just perpetuate the cycle. So.
Until there's a gap, which there's groups that are trying to build the gap between, you know, the people. But I think SB295 reinvented for next session, covering the exact same things. It's so basic, which is what I can't stress that enough.
Like, people think that these ordinances were already in place.
Yeah. And a lot of people that were against the bill, when we would get on these different, you know, message threads and things, people go, well, there's already a law, but the part that hindered it was the 24-hour period. So it was, you know, it was unenforceable completely.
I've learned a lot just reading from Texas Humane Legislative Network a lot, and credit to them for being there on the front, you know, putting out bills. I saw a lot of them fail, but a few got through, and that's what you want. You want progress. I remember seeing a story where you would find like somebody who starts fostering animals just unexpectedly, and then their whole house, kind of like your Chihuahua convention. What happens when the Chihuahua convention gets too big and you know
gets out of control so quickly?
What do you do with these people? You feel bad for them, but like the conditions of the animals, I mean, it's not fair for anybody.
I mean, it's funny you bring that up because that just happened. Like
we had somebody that's right around the corner from my house
who has been in rescue for a while.
Or been in rescue for a while, and it was how many animals seized?
It's like 42 animals.
42 animals in
1,000 square foot house.
Oh, it was the worst conditions ever. I mean, it was, you could see feces on the
wall.
up on the wall. Oh, it was horrible. But your point of people with good intentions, you know, going too far. Easy to do.
What happens when you can't say no?
You need help, right? Professional help.
Yeah.
People that care about animals and make a difference, and eventually the state legislature will come around once people start saying like, hey, we care about these issues. Hey, we don't want to see dogs like chained to the trees. Hey, we don't want to see animals thrown out into kill shelters. You know, maybe there's something we can do. Maybe there's not a whole lot the state legislator can do to affect that cultural change besides maybe like educating people. The people can definitely do it. You know, you can appropriate some money into some worthy causes, make sure that's being run properly, and I think it's possible. I mean, it's already being done, so let's just keep pushing it forward.
We were talking about earlier how Julian Castro was running on a national platform, and one of his issues is animal issues, and we both go, okay, but San Antonio was not no kill when, you know, I mean, there's all these issues behind it, and so the efficacy of him and the plan had all these issues, these holes in it. But just the fact that people are talking about it on a national level, running for the president of the United States, is a step in the right direction. It's a cultural shift, in my opinion, and I think the animal rescue community backs me on that. There's things are happening. We're making progress. We're moving in the right direction ultimately.
Yeah, it's exciting. You know, you don't want to give up on politics because the people who can't defend themselves are usually the ones who get hurt the most.
Yeah.
So when people ask me like, why are you in this? I'm like, well, because some people don't have a voice. Some people are self-serving, that the people that serve and the people that want to lead, they have to step forward. And you know, you may not know if that's you or not. You know, you may always think that you're the person that sits back and watches things happen. But if you see enough things happen and go wrong, you'll feel called to do something.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I ended up here.
That's great.
What do you think is going to be your biggest pushback in trying to pass some of these, you know, ordinances and laws for animal welfare?
Yeah.
Like in like another SB 295?
I can tell you that, like, just from being around the conventions, that it's kind of like I mentioned about the chicken has rights, and that's going to be the greatest pushback. Some very forward-thinking ideas are that, you know, animals that are sentient and have a conscience should have habeas corpus, and there's a group that's out there that's fighting called the Non-Human Rights Project, and it's very advanced thinking for civil libertarians. Some of the civil libertarians I know can't wrap their heads around it, but for somebody who understands animal welfare, it's an easy jump. So the fact that we're having that conversation, to me, means there's something good's happening, because I like to imagine myself as a society that's going to advance beyond this planet. Let's just say, what's it going to be like when we interact with other species if that were ever to happen? I mean, if you're not on our level, we're going to crush you underneath our feet and tie you to a tree. What's going to happen when somebody that's a little bit more advanced comes around? Or if you believe in a higher being like God, like I do, like I think God's entrusted us to take care of this place, be good stewards, and these are beings that need us, and we crush them. I understand that maybe we're not all going to be vegetarians, but I think a certain level of respect is innate in us, and that's when you see an animal. I mean, psychologically speaking, if you see a puppy or a kitten, the endorphins that are produced in your mind are the same as you would as a child.
Yeah.
That's the connection that you have with these animals. So there's a lot we don't know, and talking about it is the first step. But ignoring the problem is never a solution.
Yeah.
So if you were to, get elected, would you be willing to have people in support? So like, just in having us or anyone from the rescue community
Absolutely.
on board?
Yeah, of course.
We've talked about like a local version of like, not so much from people that are in the rescue community that are in different areas. So, focused so you've got a better picture of things, but kind of like what would we call it, an animal advisory board or something along those lines.
Just because you need people who are on the field, right?
Right.
Who see it on a daily basis, and it'd be great to have their input.
Yeah. I can tell you like some middle ground it's going to be reached. It's going to be like the cities have their own like ordinances, like the county-wide across like the county, not just the cities. And then the rules will probably have their own exemptions. But at least if we cover the city, that's representative of what we want.
Yeah.
So that's what you want in government, something that's representative of the people that live in that district. Maybe they don't want it across the state. Okay, well let's take care of Houston first. If it works, let's see if we can make it to Galveston. And little by little, if the idea works, it will catch on. But coming on people's property, it's on them what they can do with their animals in rural districts. That's an abuse of government to them, which if you grew up there, it would seem that way. So we have to take everybody's perspective in account, and change doesn't happen the way we want it. There's always a middle ground, and I tell this to friends that are on the left, on the right. You can't always get what you want. You have to understand that you're gonna have to come to some middle point. There's some things that we'll never fully agree on, but we can step towards that if we work together. And I think in the end, we're all built the same way. We all want the same things. It's just a matter, are you able to perceive things or see things through the eyes of another person? And doing that, it makes it a little bit more easy to reach that middle ground.
One of the things we did want to talk about was the puppy mills.
So we looked at the numbers earlier, and the total number of registered breeders in the entire state of Texas is 165 total. Now, the problem with this is the outlines to be considered a breeder, to where you have to go on this registry, is you have to have more than, it's 11 females?
11 total.
11 total unspayed or unneutered animals in your home. But the problem that Laura pointed out was the only enforcement right now, what's written in the law, is based on sales. So you have to sell a certain number of animals per year in order for this to be applicable to you. So what's happening is most of these transactions are cash transactions. So they're off the books. And so if you're saying you have to have 20 sales of animals in a year, they just go, oh, well, we didn't have this. Where we've kind of talked about the gap being more of not how many sales, but being based on the number of animals in the home that are unaltered. And to me, 11 is ridiculous. That's it's such a low bar to have to be on that registry of registered animals, to where you have to have a certain quality of care, you have to have, certain vaccines, all that kind of stuff. What do you think the number of animals needs to be lower? What do you think about, the sales?
The immediate problem I see is the enforcement regulation.
Yeah, with the sales, that's exactly what...
It's going to be a problem. Like, you have the right intent, but the content isn't going to deliver the results. So I think you really have to take a step back and see, how do we approach this problem in a way that gives us the change that we need. You could lower the threshold, but you still need enforcement. So therein lies the problem. Like, where do you get the money to do that? Is there a way to incentivize people to do that naturally? That's a good question.
We run into a lot of in Houston especially, backyard breeders, people that, we see it all day, every day on Facebook. All these people, oh, look at my blue pit bull that just that kind of thing. And I don't know what the answer is, but to me that threshold of you have to have 11 unaltered animals and then the stipulation being based on sales to be on the registry just makes.
It's just banning puppy mills.
Yeah.
I think transparency actually, consumers do a really good job, like, watchdog groups, so to speak, of saying like, let's look at this breeder, see how he's operating, spotlight them. And if they're doing something wrong, people are going to notice. Yeah. And if you can't, the internet's a great tool. You can video a lot of things, and there's a lot of activists that can take up a mantle like this and run with it. I've known people in politics that all they had was a camera and a microphone, and they made some things happen. And I think that whenever government doesn't fill that role, consumers will, because they'll know, hey, I don't want to deal with this guy. He's a dog abuser, or you should see the conditions of his animals, like he doesn't care. But it has to be very evident. So we can leverage that.
But I do think that that's already being done.
Yeah. So what we run into, like the animal rescue community, we had somebody on a board the other day that she was trying to get a hold of kittens, and it very quickly became evident that she was trying to use these kittens for bait because she had a criminal history and she was going on all these different pages, and it was so painfully clear. She had a pending court date for. It was the whole rescue community was freaking out, but. She went on just another, group, and I'm assuming probably got a hold of a kitten because it was and there was nothing that we couldn't go to the police. We couldn't. Yeah, we can't file a report because she didn't technically do anything against the law, which I agree with you. We've got to have things that are enforceable, and there's got to be the resources there to enforce it. But
burden of proof and everything too.
Yeah, but there's got to be some bridge between. Just these random people breeding animals in their backyard, or getting cats for bait animals, or there's got to be some state level action that can be taken.
Sure.
I don't know what that is, but
I'd be interested in looking into that.
What the research says as far as what's worked in other states.
The sale of like puppy stores or pet stores, requiring them just to have adopted animals instead.
Yeah, so up in the Woodlands, there's all of these puppies that have. Is it the Woodlands store?
Yeah, the Woodlands Pet Fair.
They have adopted out animals that have like parvo and distemper, and it's a long history of it. But the thing about parvo and distemper is it's so difficult to kill. So even if the animal comes in and they don't have it, they get sick by just being in this environment. It just, to me, makes no sense that we have
employees who come out saying, "Yep, that's the case."
Yeah. And none of these animals are vaccinated most of the time. Like they will pretend that they are, but they're puppy mill animals.
Thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that breaks my heart.
I don't know what the solution is, but
we should keep thinking about it, keep talking about it, because
and see what's worked in other states.
Yeah, ideally that's what you would do, is you'd look to states that have done the right things and they've gotten the right results. That is a challenge. I agree. And
I don't know what the
it's a cultural shift. People have to stop doing this, for it to stop. If you want to stop the drug war, you can't arrest everyone. People have to want to stop doing drugs. So we've got a lot to do, but I think education's got to be one. Secondly, we should come up with some common sense database, maybe for people who are repeat abusers, so that we're not crossing county lines or city lines, so we can abuse animals. That's kind of a no-brainer to me. Let's start there.
That's great.
Well, Louis, thank you so much for just coming out.
Absolutely, I know. It's so great to meet you guys. I'm sure we'll do this
Thanks
again.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you.
It feels like I've known you guys. So.
Right.
And we'll keep bugging you, and so
well, if this keeps, if I make it in, then we'll have more to talk about, I'm sure.
Great. Yeah. Sounds like a plan.
Great, guys.
Thanks
so
so
we'll
much.
put his information if you have any questions.